Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Nellie Szilagyi-Benedek, Deputy Director for Education and Programs here at the Jewish Museum. Welcome to our Director's Talk series, a program featuring James S. Snyder, Helen Goldsmith Menschel Director, in conversation with artists, authors, and other cultural leaders and thinkers, exploring the role and relevance of art in this complex moment in time. These talks offer a forum for dialogue and discourse for public audiences of diverse backgrounds and perspectives, all of whom, nonetheless, embrace the Jewish Museum as a setting for learning and engagement. The director's talks are part of the Morris W. Offit Lecture Series, made possible by the Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mandel Foundation, and we are extremely grateful for this support. Today, James is joined by filmmaker Toby Perl Freilich, and the subject of her recent film, Maintenance Artist, the artist Mierle Lauderman Ukeles, whose work is currently on view in our new exhibition on the third floor titled Identity, Culture, and Community, Stories from the Collection of the Jewish Museum. And now a few words about our speakers. Toby Perl Freilich produced and directed Maintenance Artist, about pioneering artist Mierle Lauderman Ukeles, which premiered at the 2025 Tribeca Film Festival and had a special screening at the National Gallery of Art for the Documentary Film Festival DC Docs. She also co-produced and co-directed Moynihan, released theatrically in 2018 and broadcast on PBS's American Master series in 2024, and co-produced and wrote the documentary film Secret Lives, Hidden Children and Their Rescuers, selected by Andrew Saris as one of the 10 best nonfiction films of 2003, and winner of numerous festival awards. For Secret Lives, Toby Freilich was nominated for a News and Documentary Emmy for writing, and the film was nominated in the category of Outstanding Historical Programming. Since 1977, when Mierle Lauderman Ukeles became the official unsalaried artist in residence at the New York City Department of Sanitation, she has created art that deals with the unending contradiction and tension between freedom and necessity, endless maintenance, and service work that, quote, keeps the city alive, unquote, and our power to transform degraded land and water into healthy public places. Her multimedia works, launched by her Manifesto for Maintenance Art 1969, crashes boundaries between labor and performance, system and spirit, and unveils connections between feminism, workers' rights, and the environment. Her work is featured in Maintenance Artist, the documentary film directed by Toby Freilich, and is in the collections of the Whitney Museum, the Jewish Museum, the Guggenheim, and the Wadsworth Atheneum, among others. Mierle Lauderman Ukeles is an icon. We are so pleased to welcome Mierle Lauderman Ukeles and Toby Perl Freilich to tonight's conversation with James Snyder. I would like to remind everyone to turn off your cell phones, please, and refrain from recording during tonight's program. And now, please join me in welcoming our speakers.
Whose phone is that? Well, before we begin, and before Nellie recedes into the shadow way back there, we really have to give a hand to Nellie Benedek, who's been head of education for a really long time. And you'll hear me in a few minutes say some words about the total transformation of our third and fourth floors. And Nellie's hand has been a critical part of that story as well. So you need to clap again for her on that front. So it is a pleasure to welcome all of you here this evening. Many of you know this is an ongoing series of directors' talks. It's actually our third round, having started in the spring of 2024 as part of our action plan after October 7, 2023. You may or may not recall, it happened, an anniversary moment passed 13 days ago, so I did arrive 3 weeks after October 7 and have now been here for 2 years and 13 days. And from that moment on, we did put in place an action plan so that this museum could really set a model for how to deal with the challenges of the times that we're in. And this series of directors' talks really has been, from that moment forward, about looking at the state of the world through a cultural lens. And it just becomes more and more important. We might have thought that we would do a few of those, the world would calm down. We all know that it's gone in a different direction. And doing talks like this has added meaning as part of what our core message is in a time like this. Our job is about preserving humanism. You know, this is central to the role of all museums who are custodians of the history of world culture. As some of you have heard me say, without humanism, there is no history of world culture. Our job is to look at that purview from antiquity to today. This is the job of all museums, but it's especially the job of our museum to kind of do our best to lead the way as a platform for engagement, showing how our doing so can be a model for a kind of activism which is about art and culture, not politics, but which can open a path to a brighter time ahead. And, you know, we're still looking for that. So we need to keep doing what we have been doing, and it's a pleasure to do so. This is a watershed moment for us in the museum, as I hope you all know, and I hope you all have already visited. If not, the galleries are staying open until 8 o'clock or 8:30 after we finish, so you must take a look at our new 3rd and 4th floor galleries, where we really have transformed half of our public museum. We've actually grown our museum by a third, from 3 public floors to 4, and 2 of those floors have been transformed actually in the last 12 months, from October of last year to last month. And on them, on our new 3rd floor, we relate to 3,500 years of Jewish culture in the global diaspora, resonating across that timeline with all the cultures around them. And the importance of that story is to deliver a message about integration and not isolation as a culture standing separate and apart. And also on the floor above, on our brand new 4th floor, which none of you has ever visited as a part of the public museum experience, to show collections in galleries where the public can appreciate why museums collect and how museums use their collections for teaching and learning. This really underscores the point of why museums are accumulators of the history of world culture, why they are custodians, and it really underscores also the point of how museums, by using their collections for teaching and learning, can be counterpoint to the ignorance, the racism, the xenophobia, the polarization that we are all experiencing now. And this is not just a phenomenon that affects Jewish culture, it affects many other cultures that live and do their best to flourish in the global diaspora. So there couldn't be more importance, we feel, for us at the moment than to do what we are doing our best to do. We want you to enjoy what you can see now on these new floors, but it also adds to the importance of continuing dialogues like this. And it's really a privilege and a pleasure to be here tonight with Mierle Lauderman Ukeles and with Toby Perl Freilich, both of whom I've had the pleasure of knowing for a very long time. There's a weirdly uncanny serendipity about our doing this just at this moment, and having the opportunity to have Mierle with us. She is, as Nellie mentioned, showcased in our new galleries, in the section of the galleries devoted to women in Jewish culture and to feminism, and to the notion of women in Jewish culture relegated to handwork, and given the charge, or you might say the opportunity, to elevate their handwork from the sacred to the secular. Now, Meryl may have started out somewhere entirely differently in this respect, and she was, as we all know, part of the women's action art movement in the 1970s, and her particular focus was to celebrate those service workers whose handwork preserved the order of our city, the order of cities broadly, but the order of our city particularly, and whose handwork kept, and we hope continues to keep, our city clean. She was, as Nellie mentioned, the first and I think still only artist in residence of the Department of Sanitation. Her focus from that moment forward has always been about merging art and everyday life. She is indeed the inventor of maintenance art, and she may be the best, if not the only one, who can speak to the point of what maintenance art is about. Now, the serendipity, well, it's true. There's something I could say, but I'm going to restrain myself. Now, there's something special about having Meryl here this week. Let's see, today's Thursday. 2 days ago was Tuesday. A week ago Tuesday, we elected a new mayor in our city. And to have Meryl here to speak to this point, which really grounds us here, it's not speaking in a speculative way. It takes us back to the grounding of how you respect and preserve the honor and integrity of a city place, and how you keep a city clean, not just physically, but metaphorically. And you know, I'm not saying our city is in crisis, or our country or the world is in crisis, but actually there's sort of crisis all around us. And it's exactly the moment to be talking to Meryl. It's also exactly the moment to have Toby here. As you've heard, she did produce her newest documentary, Maintenance Artist, which is exactly about Meryl's career from its beginning to the present. And again, those who come and hear me talk from time to time, often I say, for such a time as this. And once again, for such a time as this, to have the two of you here with us is a privilege for us. And you know, we're going to talk across the whole landscape of your work and what it's about, and Toby's treatment of it, and why Toby seized the moment of opportunity in order to do this documentary about you. And again, the privilege for us is that all that we say is through a cultural lens, not the kind of political lens that takes you down the dark path. For us, it's really about the path that takes you to brightness. So, with that, we're going to start. And Meryl, I often need to begin by asking our guests, you know, where they came from. Where did they begin? In your case, you were the daughter of a rabbi. You studied history and international relations. You started art school in 1962, and something took you from this notion of engaging in the world of international relations and going down the path of creative making, but then a path that took you to activism and to art observed through everyday life. So talk about that. Wait, I have to say, I sent my notes to Meryl, and she responded with this amazing, it was almost like a transcript, and I wrote back, just say that. It's great.
I want to make expansion of something that you said. You said I'm the only artist in residence in the sanitation department since 1977, and I want to amend that. That's true that I am the only DSNY artist in residence. I still am. Takes me a long time. But from some people who are sitting right here in this audience, they took this idea of mine when Tom Finkel-Pearl was the Commissioner of Cultural Affairs, working with Kendall Henry, who's the Assistant Commissioner of Cultural Affairs, and they invented a program that I actually had proposed in 1973 as a way to pay artists in residence. And because I was the artist in residence, but I'm official, but unsalaried even to this day. And they used to say to me, when I would ask in one way or another, how about, can I get some payment from something after all these like 40-some years? They would say, Ukeles, if we pay you, we have to cut a street sweeper. Do you want that to happen? So Tom and Kendall and their wonderful staff came up with a program called PAIRS, Public Artists in Residence. And there has been a public artist in residence for the sanitation department, Stowe Len, who we're happy to see him here today. A wonderful artist. Anyhow, I just had to get the record straight. So how did this all happen?
Go back to Bereshit. Go back to in the beginning.
Okay, so we lived in.
How did you switch from international relations to art? Was it a smooth transition? Was it a continuation of something?
Every summer I would go back from, studying international relations and history at Barnard in New York City, and go to the University of Colorado and the University of Denver and take art from actually even before I started college. So that the whole time that I was in college, I had this sort of bifurcated interest. And by the time I finished getting my BA, I was heading toward art. I knew that's what I wanted. To me, art is freedom. That's the value of art. An artist speaks freedom and articulates new kinds of freedom. That's what we do, and that's our value. I passionately believe that, and I found heroic people in the avant-garde, where I felt at home spiritually. I had more, but three main heroes. One was Jackson Pollock, who gave us the gift. See, they enlarged the notion of freedom. That's why they were my heroes. Gave us the gift of the body actively move within the artwork, making the art bodily. Another hero was Marcel Duchamp, who gave us the gift of renaming, naming and renaming, taking something from one context, plunking it down somewhere else, and shattering its meanings, giving it a new meaning. That action is the shattering was what he gave us. That's freedom. It's stretched freedom. And the third hero was Mark Rothko, who taught us how to move from one dimension to another within the artwork in front of you. You could travel through one dimension to another. Those were great expansions of what is the meaning of art is freedom. And I said, that's for me. That's what I want. I want that. I want that kind of life where I work to expand freedom. And it's given to the whole culture. That's what I felt Western art did. Then, out of,
You know, Meryl, your read on all of that is so different from how other artists looked at exactly that same trajectory. And I want us to get to that in a little while, but I still want to come back to the beginning. You know, it's a funny thing. It's like international relations and making art, and then your making art became about local relations. And was there something, you know, in your upbringing in a home with a rabbi as a dad that allowed you to look beyond art making in and of itself, which is what many artists did, and they would go internally with that process, whereas you expanded externally. You looked from the outside and the in at the same time. And was there anything in your upbringing and in your home and your background that gave you not just the ability to think that way, but encouraged you to do it?
well, I think I was extremely influenced by my parents, wonderful parents, each of them. My mother got married, came from the Ukraine, arrived in Kansas City, Missouri, when she was 12, had never been to school, and graduated from the National Honor Society. I mean, she absorbed the culture that she was in. They moved to Denver. That was my father's first position as a rabbi when she was 22 and he was 23. She said they loved Denver. Denver was open. And she said, I can't live in a city that doesn't have a professional symphony orchestra. So she got together actually mostly with a bunch of women all over Denver, and they created the Denver Symphony Orchestra. So that I grew up with envelopes on the dining room table, envelopes in the back of the car. She was collecting money to build this orchestra.
You know, it's funny, as you were saying that, I was thinking I need at a certain point to say that so it's clear you grew up outside of the envelope, and now you're talking about all these envelopes in your mother's car.
And my father was an Orthodox rabbi, very, very great Talmud scholar. But he got a doctorate of theology from the Aleph School of Theology in Denver, and he could have been a Methodist minister if he chose to. He was a very open-minded human being. And, you know, I listened to him preach, worked very, very hard on all his sermons, every single week, talking, I think, about culture. I don't know. It had a huge impact on me. So I grew up in an environment that was deeply spiritual and religious, but it was very, very open, very geared to the city. My father was also chairman of the Board of Health for 14 years in Denver.
And it was a time of civil rights, right?
Yes, and very
and
involved in civil rights. Why was he appointed by the mayor to be the chairman of the Board of Health? Because there was a group of very right-wing people in Denver, and they got together and they wanted to sever the connection between the public hospital, Denver General Hospital, and the University of Colorado Medical School. And they said that the doctors from the University of Colorado are communists, and a bunch of Jews also. And they severed it, and the quality of care in the Denver hospital plummeted. And it was my father's goal to bring these two back together again, so that the public hospital would be served by the best doctors in Denver. So this was stuff that I swam around in. But can I tell you one other little? So we lived down Newton Street, in this wonderful community on the west side in Denver. And it was fall, beautiful. There was the trees on both sides of Newton Street came together, like formed an LA, had a great influence on me. And it was like you're playing in indoors but outdoors at the same time, with the sun trickling through the leaves. Very beautiful, fragrant, very simple, lowerish middle class neighborhood. Anyhow, the leaves were dropping all over Newton Street, and I got up on my parents' car because there were lots and lots of leaves on the top of the car, and I was sweeping the leaves off the car. And my Aunt Sarah, not my real aunt, we called everybody on the street aunt and uncle, and she yelled at me across the street, "What are you doing? You're going to get run over. You're going to fall off of that car and you're going to get run over." And I laughed. What can I tell you? I think that was a formative experience.
Really, there is serendipity here, because what Meryl is describing is exactly what our new 3,500-year story is about. You enter the diaspora, the Spirit of the Lord is in you, but you adapt to where you are and to those around you. The Spirit of the Lord is in you, but you wear the clothes of your neighbors. And you learn from that, and you absorb from that, and you lucked out because you had parents that really gave you a platform for the free thinking that you engaged in your work as an artist. Everybody here saw Shtisel, right? Often I ask this question and people look at me with puzzlement. It's like, what's Shtisel? And I can't believe there's anyone in the world that hasn't seen Shtisel. But his family suffocated him. They didn't want him to be an artist. And they weren't out in this diaspora where the Spirit of the Lord is in you, but you wear the clothes of those around you. You had that other experience. And this is what our 3,500-year narrative is all about. And, we mentioned that we have an unbelievable masterpiece of Meryl in our gallery devoted to women in Jewish culture and feminism. And it's her work from 1964, which is ours, called Second Binding. I describe it as a Mona Lisa of her early work. 64 is before Meryl really stepped on the stage that would take her to become the Meryl that we know today. And that piece, if you have to go look at it when we're all done, it's like it turns garbage into gemstones. It's just exactly what women in Jewish culture are supposed to do with their handwork, turn the secular into the sacred. When we went through the galleries just now and you saw the context in which we put that piece, I want you to say a few words about how you felt, and then we do want to move forward to the moment when you really started to form the manifesto that would become your life.
Well, I must tell you, James took us on a fabulous tour of the new galleries. Brand new, right?
2 weeks old.
2-week-old, 2 floors. It's really stunning, beautifully installed, by the way. I congratulate your staff for that. And I found it shocking. It doesn't, to me, and I'm still really, I have to think about what I experienced moving through the galleries. It doesn't look like any museum that I can imagine. It's not like the canon moving through how art history in the West has been presented. It's different. There are weavings, in unexpected weavings. I could spend a whole lot more time there, I must say. So I need to, but I congratulate you. It's a fascinating attempt to grapple with how complex our culture is at this moment. That's what you're swimming in when you go through the gallery. I think Tom Friedman wrote this incredible article just recently about complexity, how complex, everything is poly, this and that. We are in a poly culture now, and I think that James and his staff are trying to grapple with this complex reality that we have.
You're very kind to say that. And we thank you.
Shocking, I gotta tell you.
You know, but, well, there's Norman Kleeblatt, who was here for a very long time, and when the museum reinvented itself 30 years ago. And again, for such a time as this, you really need to look at complexity and try to achieve clarity. And we have to get back to you. Meryl fits into this picture in an amazing way. And the way that you were brought up, and those of us who were brought up really in the diaspora, not here in New York City, have a sense of how you relate to the complexity of the cultures around you, the diversity and yet the integrative potential of the cultures around you. And it does give you the opportunity to look differently. And as you go through this gallery devoted to women in Jewish culture and this notion of turning the secular into the sacred, to look at this work from '64, which really predates by several years the clarity of vision that transformed you into the artist that you became, there's a real power there. Toby, you of course studied the work, and the work was part of your thinking about the whole picture of the documentary. How did you feel walking in there?
Oh, in the galleries? I thought it was stunning. It was, you know, I'm someone who thinks I'm so familiar with the history of Jewish culture, but it's such a fresh perspective. And I also think it's not a huge space, and yet it felt as if you covered a lot of ground in a way that expanded what you were seeing in a relatively small place. And really my mind expanded. It wasn't a narrow focus at all. It was an unexpected and just stunning layout.
And seeing second binding there, did that give clarity to what we wanted to accomplish?
Yeah. I hadn't seen second binding since the Queens Museum show, that the career retrospective at the Queens Museum. There are a bunch of people here who were very instrumental in making sure that exhibit happened. And, you know, the name of the film is Maintenance Artist, and second binding is not part of the maintenance artist canon. But it prefigured, I mean, it was the moment, I think, Mierle, you told me that you understood that you were not just an art student, but you were an artist, and you had something to say. And that began with the bindings. And I was staring at them, and I had just never looked at them like that. So it was very powerful.
You know, it gives clarity to that moment, and I want us to jump forward just, 4 years. In '68, you had your first kid.
Right.
And you did.
That's the thing that happened.
Should we play the?
And you did have an epiphany at that moment, and you were.
Not yet.
Wait.
Well,
yet.
it began. Okay, you planted the seeds of an epiphany, and it was.
Let him play that.
And it was really about thinking suddenly about the role of a woman and the role of an artist, and how to put them together in a new way. And I have to say, Toby, with all of her research on her documentary, was kind enough to give us all these little clips. And I want to play one right now, and then we want to hear your response to it.
I had an epiphany. If I'm the boss of my freedom, art is going to have to change.
Look, man, fantastic.
Art follows me. I don't have to shape up to Jackson, to Marcel, to Mark. I choose this life. That's my freedom.
If Marcel Duchamp can take a urinal and say, I name this art, then I say, I name maintenance art. That way I could do my laundry. I didn't feel like I sold out.
So this was the start of your sort of thinking about how to merge these roles and not to make them disparate. So speak about it.
It was 1968. We were blessed with the birth of our child. We adored her. We were in a brand new world. I did not know what the hell I was doing. I had never babysat. It was endless. Mostly it was endless. But, and often boring. How many diapers can you change and think it's interesting? I would sometimes feel like my brain was getting ready to pop out of the top of my head and say, you know, I'm not made for this. I'm made for unlimited freedom so I can create. And then there
Wait,
she
can I
was.
just say one thing? This isn't in the film, and I don't know if you remember this, but you had an aunt who said about your work, like, I don't know why she's sweeping now. She never swept when she was a kid. Remember?
I was going to say the same about I never babysat.
Yeah, exactly.
I ran away from anything to do with maintenance. Anything that got in the way of making my art, I was out of there. I was just not going to be there anymore. Well, I look around, I think about my heroes. I felt that they were carving out these paths, how an artist could move in the world, and I realized that they don't change diapers. And I fell out of their picture. I was in deep crisis. I felt I was falling and falling. And then it was in Philadelphia. I was very angry, like, what the hell? I was very shocked. And then I got calm. And I said, if I am the boss of my freedom, which I believed as an artist, then I name maintenance art. This is what my life is now. And it is art that's going to have to change, not me. I don't have to shape up to Jackson, Marcel, and Mark, who don't change diapers. I do. Art is going to have to deal with that. And that's how it is. That's how it is. And then I said, I made a proposal for an exhibition called Care that dealt with personal maintenance. It was actually, I wanted to get the whole Whitney Museum, the Breuer building, so I designed it for there, really, in my manifesto. First, I would live in the museum with my baby and Jack and take care of things, sweep, clean, and all that. Then on the second floor, there would be social maintenance, interviews with 50 different kinds of people. How do you keep going? How do you move things from one side of your desk to the other? What happens to your freedom? What happens to your dreams when you spend all your time taking care, staying alive? And then the third and fourth, and maybe fifth floor would be earth maintenance. Every day, a garbage truck would deliver its load, polluted Hudson River water, polluted air would be delivered, and inside, because it's a cultural institution that transforms things, some of these materials that became corrupted and degraded through human use would be transformed and removed back to the city healed?
Well, I just want to point out here that, and this is one of the things that I loved also about your work, is that you located change within culture and not necessarily within the realm of politics.
Right.
And
That's what culture is for.
Right, and you always said to me that artists have a different way of approaching problems and solving problems. And that was one of the notions behind the PAIRS program, the Public Artists in Residence programs. Like, let's get artists in here to tackle city and social problems. And I thought that was just a wonderful, innovative, brilliant idea.
And you know, not all artists over time have defined activism in this way, where it's cultural activism, it's activism through art. And you know, again, not to come back to the thesis of our new galleries, but it's exactly what we are doing and where there is this incredible resonance here, because a big part of our story is about how artists in the diaspora create new visual vocabularies specific to their experience in the diaspora. And that's what you did. And you know, part of our thesis is that World War I produced art and surrealism. World War II produced abstraction, where this museum played a huge role. And it's exactly your absorbing all the complexities of the times that you were in that enabled you to create your path, and where your role was unique. And you did write your own manifesto, and we have a next clip, which is exactly your speaking to the definition of your manifesto.
Manifesto for Maintenance Art, 1969. Mierle Lauderman Ukeles. Maintenance is a drag. It takes all the fucking time, literally. The culture confers lousy status on maintenance jobs, equal minimum wages, housewives, no pay. Wash the dishes, clean the floor, wash your clothes, wash your toes, change the baby's diaper, go to the store, I'm out of perfume. Say it again, he doesn't understand. Clear the table, call him again, flush the toilet, stay young. Now I will simply do these maintenance everyday things and flesh them up to consciousness, exhibit them as art. My working will be the work.
I just want to get back to this issue of culture also, which is something that we think of as soft and squishy. And one of the things that I loved about your work was that it had this kind of conceptual depth, but a very creative breadth. And there's an engineering brain lurking somewhere inside your art brain. And so a lot of the work you've done is not just, it's deep, but it's also based on real understanding of the environment. I mean, all the Fresh Kills work, all the environmental work is deeply complex. I mean, Mierle sort of figured out and mastered a lot of the systems of where the waste goes and how do we remediate land that's polluted. It wasn't soft and squishy. It was actually very particular and skillful.
And this is the case. And you know, to fast forward from your statement of your manifesto to today, what do you see out there? And again, let's stay on the cultural plane, not any other. But what do you see out there, and how do you feel that your approach can energize a path to a brighter time ahead? And how do you feel you are still playing a role in this today and can still play a role?
I'm actually encumbered with the sense of multiple crises, James, I have to say. Hangs very heavy, I feel, on all of us. Not knowing what to do. Where's leadership? Where's vision? I'm looking for vision to have move the world, keep the world alive, keep our culture alive, give hope for young people. That's what really bugs me, is that the pessimism and corruption and, well, I'm not going to get political, James.
Thank you.
Cuts the dreams of young people. I think it's a crime. Anyhow, I also feel that do we want to stay here? Do we want to stay here on this planet? Then we have to get to work. We just have to get to work.
It's a big point, and it brings me to Toby. This is a segue to what drew you to Mierle and what drew you to making your documentary. And it's out, and it's been incredibly received. Did you expect this kind of response? And how do you feel about the response? And do you feel that it can be part of delivering a message about a crusade that we all need to adopt as our own?
Well, the genesis of the project is that I saw the show at the Queen's Museum, the the museum-wide career retrospective it was 2017. And it was a moment where the zeitgeist was was mean. It was just mean. People were not caring. They were not kind. And I think what sort of I was so caught up with Mierle's sense of vision. There was something prophetic, and as Tom Finkelpearl says in the film, now the notion of care is very much part of the focus in the arts world. But she's been working on this for 50 years. And I think that it was almost like an antidote to the toxins that were in the environment. And I don't know that, I always think, you start a film, it's like a relationship. You better really like this person, because it's going to be a rough ride and it's going to take a long time. And, if you're not going to walk out, you have to really love your subject. And I was fortunate, and I had a great subject. And my interest in it wasn't just sustained. It kept. There were always sort of new things that I learned and that were ignited in me in studying not just Mierle's work, but the work of other women artists of that time. You talked about the women's action art movement, and I had always wanted to make a film about an artist, and I thought that Mierle's story was particularly filmic, because it happened at a time of great cultural upheaval, where passions were riding high, and artists were not, it wasn't just about the visual arts. There was a sort of intersectionality between art and dance and cooking and music. It was on so many fronts, and there was something so exciting about performance art, and not just performance art, but this notion of, okay, let's rethink this whole thing of, like, what is art? What is art altogether? Like, how do we define, like, come on, here we are, people, the 20th century was about death. It was about, wars and mass killings, and that generation of artists just said, we've got to rethink this whole thing called art. And that was really exciting.
And among those artists, and we're coming back to you as our guest speaker, among those artists, you had a different take. You didn't go negative. And when you speak about your male heroes, when you speak about Duchamp, Pollock, Rothko, and we're going to show the last of these little segments, you don't take the path that they were suffocating you. And it's really interesting to see this.
My heroes were Jackson Pollock, who gave the gift of free bodily movement in the work. Marcel Duchamp gave me the gift of naming and renaming. And Mark Rothko, who gave me the ability to move from one dimension to another. But my heroes that I looked to didn't change diapers.
I also love that, like, that what you did was reach across the gender divide. Can you talk about why you decided to, like, what were you trying to set out, what did you set out to do, and why did you think you had to stretch your hand across that gender divide?
I didn't actually consciously say I'm going to do something across the because the subject matter sort of took in everybody on the one hand. One beautiful moment when I was going around the city for about 11 months, reaching all the 59 sanitation districts to face each worker of 8,500 and say thank you for keeping New York City alive. I didn't say thank you for keeping New York City clean. I said alive. And I was in a section in Harlem, mixed racially, very mixed racially, and a black sanitation worker said, we're treated like lowlives, and it's not about race, it's about class. We're seen as being in a different class from other people. That's where the gender divide disintegrated. Or when I was in the South Bronx talking to this garage of people that drove street sweepers. So street sweepers are noisy and the street is noisy, so the people often are very loud when they talk. And that, like, one guy said, "Hey, touch." So I said, "My name is Meryl." He said, "Meryl, you have to say, why should people listen to us? Why should they pay attention to us? They treat us, it's not equal. It's not equal." This grew massively in me, that this is, I'm talking about a revolution here. An entire revolution of how we think about things, period. That maintenance cannot, if it's going to keep us alive, it can't be outside of the system. Like when I said to the sanitation worker, "Why does this happen to you? Why do people talk to you like that?" And then he said, "It's because of class." And I actually felt, as an artist, I got a criticism from other artists. It's not, you're not a feminist because you're making work about men. That it is about, I felt as if I were falling out of my middle class. I was just falling out of it, where people would meet me and say, you know, I'm killing myself trying to be an artist, trying to be a mother, when I'm I literally, look how rigid second wave feminists were. I divided the week into half. Half the week I was the mother and stayed home with the child. Half the week I was the artist, and I would hire someone to watch the child and go be the free artist. So what happened, when I was with the child, I was saying to myself, you're not gonna make it. You're not gonna ever get out of this. You're never gonna get out of this childcare repetition. You're not gonna be able to be an artist. When I was the artist, the free artist, I'm in my studio and I'm looking and I'm thinking to myself, is she really paying attention to Yael? Is she listening to her? What's happening? What kind of care quality is she really giving the child? So it's like the crisscross wasn't working all that equally 50-50.
I should point out that a lot of women of your generation, and especially the previous generation, who were artists, did not have children. There was just no way to reconcile having the kind of passion that you need and the sort of the persistence to be an artist, a great artist, and to be a mother.
And your being a mother really did give you that moment of clarity, that epiphany that produced the manifesto, which today still allows you to crusade and with a positive agenda and a different take. Now, seeing the documentary the full documentary is a way to get this picture in full. And we're just going to show you the trailer, and then we have one last question for you after that. And after you see the trailer, I think next week on Tuesday
the 18th.
at the Manhattan JCC, you can see the documentary in full.
All right, fellas, give Miss Ukeles a minute, please.
Hi, good morning. My name is Mierle Lauderman Ukeles. I'm a maintenance artist.
In many ways, Mierle is sort of the consummate New York City public artist.
I desire to create a new kind of utterly public art. This area is now being maintained as art.
One of the most innovative things that she did was declare that her everyday activities were a kind of art.
At that time, people were being laid off day by day.
3,000 dumped from the payroll.
Maintaining New York City has become a life and death matter.
The thing that I shared with sanitation workers was that I would meet people pushing my baby carriage, and they didn't see me as a human being.
We are underestimated.
Absolutely.
My heroes that I looked to didn't change diapers. So I put the personal and the municipal together to be pissed off at the same time.
We were taking the bus to school, and she wasn't around.
She would leave the house at all sorts of crazy hours.
And I'm sure she was full of guilt.
Then I started hearing criticism. I'm not really a feminist if I'm only doing work with men. I was like trying to hold everything together.
Mierle is still very much an active artist.
I propose that we make a ballet with the snow workers. My project, Landing, will be the first permanent artwork at Fresh Kills landfill. How the hell did I get away with doing this stuff?
Look, man, fantastic.
Her legacy relates to her relationship with her audiences, the care she gives to her collaborators.
I want to say thank you to them.
All of that stuff is stuff that people are thinking deeply about now, that she's been thinking about for 50 years.
We're in this together.
You know, really, having this film out right now, we all know what goes round comes round, and we're back where we've been in other times, and it makes your agenda and your strategy as important now as it was then, and that has a lot of meaning. And I've one last question for you. You know, you really do fit into our mantra here about the experience of Jewish artists in the diaspora. It's not about you're a Jewish artist. It's not about Jewish art. That's a whole other topic that we won't discuss tonight. You are an artist, and you are an artist who is Jewish. Your experience is in the diaspora. It's clear that your upbringing fed you with a lot of of strategies. Your upbringing gave you a toolkit for what you ultimately would do and become. The Spirit of the Lord is in you, and yet you absorb and you continue to engage in that diasporatic community with all of its complexities. Your life today is really, it's New York and Jerusalem. And you know, I just want you, as your last comment, to talk about what do you feel is your homeland now? You know, where do you feel in the complexity of this moment you should invest your time and energy to reach the same goals you were trying to reach when you made your manifesto?
Where? You're asking where? You're asking where? I have to tell you that I got a call from ETH, University in Zurich. That's like MIT. It's really fancy university. And they've invited me to, the architecture department invited me to come give a lecture there and get something that I can't talk about yet. This professor, Anna Puglijaran. Jenner. Yeah. She's listen to this, she's a professor of architecture and care. I'm getting there, James. And she wanted me to come to Venice this week. I said, I can't, I'm in New York, and then I'm going to Zurich. So we're going to do a Zoom at the day of the screening, the morning of the screening, because she designed for the Vatican at the Venice Architectural Biennial now. She designed the pavilion about care. I don't yet actually know what it is, but we're going to talk about it. And she said that in the publication that the Vatican produced, they have my manifesto for maintenance art. So when you say where do you belong, I was actually thrilled to that the Vatican, among different things they do, is focusing on care. And as Tom says so kindly in the film, I've been talking about this stuff for 50 years. So an artist belongs everywhere, actually. That's what I think.
You know what? The short answer is the diaspora is your homeland. And this is a great thing. And for all of us, that is the case. And you are a fine example. And we thank you so much. And Toby, we thank you for precipitating this conversation. But really, Meryl, to have you here is fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you for being with us.
I want to thank James also and his incredible staff, really, for organizing this event, and for hosting us.
I must say, I didn't know Toby before. She came to my show. It spoke to her. She came to me. She spent 8 years making this film.